This is Phil Dixon with another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Today is the January 21st edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. So I'm going to hang on just a moment, let people get a chance to join in. Had a nice group of people over here last night in the broadcast. It was kind of late broadcast, but I was amazed that there was so many people still up. And of course, I'm broadcasting from Kansas City, so it's 9:17 here in Kansas City. That makes it 10:17 in the east. So, all right, I know you guys getting some weather. You probably snowed in. It's a great day to talk some baseball. So, going to give you right at a minute, and then I'm going to jump in with some historic facts that have occurred through the ages on January the 21st that involve African American baseball players. And this is a unique space because we're bringing this kind of history to you all the time. And I do want to say this. Uh, I just completed, just a few days ago, my 300th broadcast. And so you got to figure, man, I started in July and I've laid down 300 broadcasts and where you can go back and you can listen to all kinds of information. But 300 broadcasts, guys, that is a lot of history that's out there. So I don't know if anybody's going to be able to surpass that, but I'm going to keep dropping this history. And pretty soon we're going to get to 400 broadcasts. But right now we're celebrating the 300. And of course, not too long ago, we passed our 500 subscriber. And so I've got a real dedicated group of people who follow me. And I certainly appreciate your support. And just keep on supporting me. And I will keep on bringing this history. As you know, I have this would be my 42nd year of actually being a black baseball historian. Before that, I was just a kid who loved baseball. And then I loved Major League Baseball, and I followed my favorite team at that time was the Kansas City Royals. And I followed them from day one, hanging around the ballpark, meeting the players, going way back to some of the 1969 Kansas City Royals, Ellie Rodriguez and Pat Kelly and Mike Fiore and Bob Oliver and Joe Foy. I don't know if you remember any of those guys. Dick Drago was around, Jim Rooker, right? So that's going way back. But those are some of my heroes coming along. And so here I am all these years later. That was like 1969. And here we are, 2026. And I'm still out here telling the baseball story. So anyway, well, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in here. If you're listening, go ahead and subscribe if you're interested. And then also let me know where you're joining from. That's always interesting to me. All right. Okay, so let's go back to 1897. 1897. Yeah, somebody just joined in and said hello. Yeah, let me know where you're joining from. So the first one I'm going to give you is January 21st, 1897. Lewis Reynolds. That's Kawani. Kawani's great first baseman signed a contract with manager Peters to hold down the initial sack and to captain the Chicago Unions for the coming season of 1897. Of course, Reynolds played the 1896 season with the Kewanee team, and that's a Kewanee, Illinois. I'm going to make a correction here on my own spreadsheet that I keep here. I sometime every once in a while I'll see something that I need to correct. The 1896 season, and the city at that time is they had a population of about 7,000 people, and it was a manufacturing town. And so how about this? In 2026, they have a population of 12,000 people. So it hadn't changed much since Lewis Reynolds signed his contract to play with the Chicago Unions back in 1897. All right, then. Somebody said Lake Tahoe. Haven't been to Lake Tahoe. I've been to Nevada. I don't think I've ever presented in the state of Nevada that I can think of, that I've been there several times. And we'll be going there in a couple of months from now, just as a tourist, though. All right. So thank you for joining, by the way. All right. And let's go to January 21st, 1899. All right. The Topeka Daily Capital newspaper reported that George Richardson of the Topeka team of Topeka received a call from the manager of the Chicago Union. So we know that was going to be Peters again. He's still out, always recruiting players, right? And he said that, and And Richardson said that he will probably play for the Chicago Unions that year. And so he did play. So he received a telephone call. Now, interesting, did they have telephones back in 1899? And isn't that interesting? Or maybe it's just interesting to me. So I had to look it up. And believe it or not, in 1900, about 1 in 126 Americans had a telephone. So, yes, he probably could have gotten a telephone call, which is what the newspaper said. And when they said he received a call, it was in quotation marks. So that was kind of special. Yeah. Please let me know when you're in Nevada. Okay, I would definitely do that. Okay. And I see Bob's joining me tonight. And Bob, I'm glad you could catch me. Bob's been a very loyal supporter. And I was just telling them tonight, Bob, that just a few days ago, I passed my 300 broadcasts. Okay. And that's something I'm celebrating. 300 broadcasts. That's a lot. But there's more history in me, and I'm going to keep on saying it. So anyway, just George Richardson of Topeka, and I've been to Topeka a number of times to present up there. Of course, that is the hometown of Carol Ray Mothel, who got me started doing this African American baseball history way back in 1980. Of course, Bingo DeMoss is from there as well. Topeka Jack Johnson is from there. And recently, probably maybe 10 years ago, Sabre erected a monument at Mothel's gravesite, and also Jack Johnson, Topeka Jack Johnson, of course, not the Jack Johnson, but Topeka Jack Johnson, who managed the Kansas City, Kansas Giants 1907 through 1909. That was a year they had 54 consecutive victories. Can you imagine that? 54 consecutive victories. And that was the Kansas City, Kansas Giants. But they had their origins in Topeka, Kansas. All right. So let's go to the next one. How about we're going to jump into a 1915. Charles Mills, owner of the St. Louis Giants, sealed the deal for Kubler's Park at 6100 North Broadway in St. Louis. And how about this? A white syndicate dropped the money to back the team, a white syndicate. And they actually, how much did they drop? They dropped 2,500. And you think about 2,500 in 1915, and you adjust that for inflation, which I did. That gives you about $79,468, and even went down to 13 cents for 2025 would be the value of that. So basically, to fund this team, they dropped close to, in modern days money, $80,000. Man, that's amazing. And it was a white syndicate. I don't know who was in that syndicate, but I've been trying to find out. I'm going to keep on digging a little deeper and see if I can't find that out. Charles Mills would go on later on to incorporate and start selling stock for his team around 1919, 1920, 21, when they were in the Negro National League. Yeah, they were an investment company, and you could actually buy shares in the team. So I've never actually seen one of the documents, but I have seen the state incorporation papers. So, man, that's pretty aggressive there. So anyway, that was Charles Mills. Yeah. Okay. But at the same time Charles Mills was organizing, there was another team called the Wellston Federal Baseball Team, and it was organized at the same time as the St. Louis Giants. Of course, the members of that team included people like George Baker, Fred Bostic, Oscar Hutt, Hutt, Al Williams, Elroy Wesley, Richard Devine, Blink Evans, John Moss, George Henderson, Jake Bailey, and Edward Hunkle, Hunkle. Yeah, the most successful of those players was the guy named Oscar Hutt, Hutt, Oscar Hutt. He played first base and outfield in the Negro Leagues from 1919 to 1926 and played with such illustrious teams as the Dayton Marcos, of course, the St. Louis Giants in 20 and 24, the Toledo Tigers, and the Cleveland Elites in 1926. So Oscar Hutt. So, man, there were lots of teams organizing in this period. And when I grew up, once again, I say this all the time. I was a kid who read books. I read books. I read books like this. I read books like these baseball registers, baseball digests, had magazines. I would just read and consume baseball information. And the problem was, they didn't give me all the history. They just gave me the history of the white major and minor league players. And so there was so much I did not know. And I was curious. And I really love baseball. And once again, I came from an all black community. And I used to hear people whisper, as you might say, of people talking about the Negro Leagues. And of course, Eddie Dwight lived across the alley from us. And so my parents knew him real well. And he had a couple of brothers. We used to call them Boots and Bus. That was his brothers. Knew them real well. And somebody said using the gold standard, $2,500 and 15 would be six hundred thousand, right? That's a lot of money today. Okay, I guess if we were on the gold standard, we would be in good shape, wouldn't we? So anyway, yeah. So this whispering of the Negro Leagues was all around, but I couldn't find it in my books. And so I set out in 1980 and decided I was going to make a change. And I wanted to tell baseball from what I felt was the African American point of view. And of course, there were a few people out there then. I know Robert Peterson had written this book, but I never really found Peterson. But the two people that I interacted the most with would be Jim Riley and John Hallway. And Hallway wrote me all the time to talk about baseball. And he was always interested in what I was doing. And I remember telling Hallway that I wanted to write a photographic history. He said, "You'll never find enough photographs to do that." Well, guys, I did complete that project. It took me 10 years. And in 1992, the book, The Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History, won the best baseball book of the year. And I have the award on my wall over there, still on my wall. And so won the best baseball book of the year. And I remember Bill James, in one of his books, he picked it as one of the top 5 books of the 1990s. So I'm still out here, guys. I'm still trying to make a difference, and I'm trying to beat my own record. I never wanted to be a one-hit wonder. You know, one of those singing groups or bands or whatever. They get the first hit, and then they never hit another. They never get another hit. I never wanted to be that way, and so my last 2 books have been award winners. So I'm still making it happen. All right, so let's go to another one here. So we got, how about this? January 21st, 1934. Okay, Satchel Paige tossed a 4-hit game as he shut out the all-white Winter League All-Stars 2-0. His victory came in game 1 of a doubleheader at Los Angeles White Sox Park. The losing pitcher was Lee Stein. Of course, Lee Stein pitched for the Chicago White Sox in 1934-35, Cincinnati Reds in 36, and the New York Yankees in 1938. But imagine this, he got beat by a guy who wouldn't get to the American League until 1947. How about that? Just imagine what baseball would have been had someone like Satchel Paige and many, many others been allowed to play. Some of these records that we're celebrating now, we wouldn't be celebrating those particular players. And we might not be celebrating those records. There might be records that will not ever be surpassed. And so guys have been surpassing those records ever since black players got in the league, making things happen. So it's kind of interesting when you look back and see how racism can affect all aspects of American history. So baseball is the one I specialize in, the one I know about the most. So anyway, that was Satchel Paige. He's an all-time legend. He's buried here in Kansas City. I had the honor of writing the inscription on the back of his monument, and I'm quite proud of that. It connected me to an all-time legend. And if I think about maybe my top 5, I think that one would make my top 5. Writing the inscription on the back of Satchel Paige's monument. Yeah, and it's a little poetic thing. But if you ever hear me speak in person, generally what I do is I open up with poetry and I close with poetry. So I have these long streams of poetry that I do. It's completely different than what I talk about here. And then also, almost every time I bring my trumpet along too. So I may play "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" and just lightweight stuff like that. But occasionally I'll go to parks and play the national anthem and things like that. So hopefully I'll do a little bit more of that this year. I went to Cleveland in the fall of last year, and I was there for some kind of festival they were having, celebrating the Cleveland Buckeyes, and they had three games that day. So I played the national anthem three times in one day. The first time I've done that. So, but anyway, I'm having fun. That's what I'm having. And baseball is meant to be fun. So, guys, if you really want to have fun around a sport, baseball is a good selection. All right. All right. So let's go to. I just got a couple more. January 1st, 1938. You probably heard of this guy named George Crow. Well, he had an off night and he scored just 14 points in the Franklin High School. He's actually their mascot was the Grizzly Cubs, and they lost to the Columbus Bulldogs by a 47-39 score. And how about this? In 1939, a year later, George Crow received the first ever Mr. Basketball Award in Indiana sports history, and that's an award they still give to the best high school basketball player in Indiana. So he received that. Of course, he goes on to play for the New York Black Yankees in 1947 and 48. And on April 16, 1952, he took the field with the Boston Braves, and he was age 31. How about that? And that is George Crow. If you collected baseball cards in the 1960s, the 50s, I'm sure you probably picked up a George Crow card, right? He was a good hitter, but he was an all-around athlete and a fantastic youth basketball player. He also played professional basketball, played with the Red Devils with Jackie Robinson, and he also played with the New York Renaissance team. So this guy he was doing it all. Somebody said, I went to Larry Doby Day last year in Cleveland. All right, Cleveland, you know what? If you go down to where they have the old League Stadium, man, they've done a great job with that. And I went to Cleveland last year, and I was so surprised. Cleveland is a wonderful city down on the river there, the riverfront, and that's where they had the event. And the people there, they like what I did, and I did some poetry there, and they gave me a standing ovation, guys. So I hope to go back to Cleveland again, to League Park, and I know they're having the Sabre National Convention there this year. So I'm probably going to show up in Cleveland this year again. So yeah, somebody say it's a cool museum. I totally agree. And they've got some good people running the museum also. And so yeah, if you have a chance, if you're in Cleveland or you visit there, go down to the old League Park Museum. It's pretty unique, pretty unique. I've been to some different spaces around the country, doing my traveling and speaking. But I tell you, I was pretty impressed with League Park and what they did with where the old park used to be, and how they built that complex up and kept the park in the same dimensions as it was when the League Park was there. So it's kind of amazing to go to some of these cities and see some of these wonderful and interesting things that people have done. I know this past year I was in Jamestown, North Dakota. And I had been there before, maybe 10 years before, presenting in there. I was going to Canada, so I stopped over in Jamestown, spoke in Bismarck, North Dakota. But I had to go back to the park because they had an old park there and one of these wood structures, and it caught on fire. And the people there loved the park so much that they went and got the original specifications for how to build the park. And they built the park completely over again that looked like the old park. And if you go there now, it's the only baseball park that I know of that I've been to that has chicken wire for the fence. Most people, they have the fencing like we have in our yard. If you have the wire fencing, they have chicken wire. So you're actually watching the game through chicken wire, which was originally there. That's in Jamestown, North Dakota. If you ever get up there, I tell you what, I love going there in July. I wouldn't want to be there right now. No, it gets pretty cold up there. So, but great baseball area. If you're out traveling around and you want to see some interesting things, go to Jamestown around Bismarck. And many Negro League players love going up there. Of course, Satchel Paige, we know his story in Bismarck, but Bullet Rogan pitched a season at Jamestown, 1930. 33, I think, no, 32. 32 he pitched up there a season. So just know there's great baseball all over America. So I agree with you there, John. Yeah, it's a great museum. All right, then. So we got George Crow. And here's my last one for today. January 21st, 1969. Where were you guys in 1969? Roy Campanella and Stan Musial are voted into the Hall of Fame at Cooperstown, New York. And both of these men were three-time MVP award winners. And Musial made it on his first year of eligibility. It took Campanella three times. So his third time is the time he made it in. And when he reached the Hall of Fame, he became the second baseball player with Negro League experience to reach the Hall. The first one would be Jackie Robinson just a few years before that. And of course, Roy Campanella in 69. And they were the first two African Americans enshrined in the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. When you think about that, guys, that well, you want to celebrate that, but it doesn't really tell the whole story because Jackie Robinson had to actually play in the National League, and of course Campanella did too, before they would ever recognize how great they were. So you had 100 years of great African American baseball players that never got celebrated, never received their celebration. Now today there are a number in the Hall of Fame, and it started off with Satchel Paige in 1971, but it could have easily started before then with people like Saul White, for one. I see Bill Monroe. That's one of my favorite guys that is not even getting mentioned. Of course, Ruth Foster was one that could have been a shoe-in. They should have known Ruth Foster. Everybody that probably went into the Hall of Fame in the 30s and the 40s, they knew about Ruth Foster's ability. And Mike Donlin used to pitch for the New York Giants. He said back in 1908, how about this? He said that Ruth Foster is the equal to Christy Mathewson and Mordecai Three Fingers Brown. So the big train and Three Fingers Brown, Mike Donlin, who was a great hitter, by the way. I think in 1905, he was one of the few National League players with 200 hits, if I'm correct. You can look that up, guys. A lot of times I'm talking from my memory just because I've been reading stuff like this all my life, right? So some things I remember, but I remember one time I went out to give a pep talk to a baseball team, and a guy who knew me ever since I was a kid, he told his team, he said, "This guy has forgotten more than you'll ever know." So I don't know about that, but I know sometimes I have to think about some things, but it's still quite a bit of information inside my head. So, but anyway, so yeah, so that is it for tonight. If you have any questions, whenever you hear me, just hey, get your questions ready and then ask me some questions. One of these days, if I get enough people on my broadcast, I'm gonna just let you fire questions at me, and then I will try to answer those questions. So okay, all right then. Thank you, Bob. You got quick fingers. 216 hits in 1905 for Turkey Mike Donlin. Yeah, Ruth Foster pitched against him in 1907, and man, he had Turkey's number. Turkey couldn't do anything with Ruth Foster. That's why in 1908, he said that this guy is the equal. And he would know because he was in the National League and he faced both of those guys on a regular basis. You remember there were only 8 teams in the league, so you would see teams more often. So you kind of know who these guys were. So I hope that you enjoyed tonight. Like I said, these are kind of late night editions. I'm thinking, I'm thinking about ways to reach people, but I thought about doing some broadcasts and maybe calling them a night game broadcast or something like that, and just having some fun with this baseball. So, guys, we're not too far away from spring training, so I'm going to keep on giving you information. And this is the end of the January 21st. 2026 edition of This Day in Baseball History. Of course, I'll be back. And so now I am going, somebody said, I have an idea about that. Okay, Bob, hey, you know how to reach me. Just text me and hey, I'm open to ideas. I am getting another camera because I tried something the other day and it did flip everything in the right direction. And so what I'm going to do is get another camera. I didn't like the clarity on that camera. So I want something that's going to be a little more clearer. So I'm going to have to get a special attachment. I was trying to use my computer. It worked out. And I've actually, believe it or not, bought a new microphone and everything. So everything is just jumping along. But if you've been listening to my broadcast, guys, I'm 300 broadcasts in. And I haven't really, in my estimation, really delivered the fire yet. So we'll see what happens. So thank you for everybody for joining. I'm way past my time here. And so, yeah, I got to come back tomorrow. So I don't want to labor this out. So thank you. And I will see you real soon. This is Phil Dixon with another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. And thank you for joining me. Have a nice evening, guys. And I'll see you real soon. Bye.